Miss Collins?
Yes?
It's Ellie. We spoke on the phone.
Oh, yes. Room is on the top floor. Have a few rules. Don't take smokers.
I don't smoke.
No male visitors after 8 o'clock.
Not a problem.
And no using the laundry room at night. It rattles right through to mine.
I don't do laundry.
Eh?
I mean, I don't do nighttime laundry. I do laundry. I'm very clean.
Good. It's a bit old-fashioned for some, but I won't do nothing to it. If you don't like it, you can find somewhere else.
It's perfect. I love it.
You're listening to The Night Before, a movie podcast. Each episode, we find a unique place in the city and share a drink and our thoughts about the movie we watched the night before. This is Lee, and I am joined, as always, by my husband, Jesse.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
I'm ready.
You're ready. So we saw Last Night in Soho last night.
We did see Last Night in Soho last night in the movie theater.
In the movie theater.
Yeah.
But that's not too uncommon now. I mean, we saw Lamb in the movie theater. But this was like a movie
Yeah,
theater.
this was like a AMC movie theater.
AMC movie theater.
We usually go to the smaller ones. And it was loud. It was so loud.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing
I mean,
about...
in a good way, but I wasn't used to the loudness of the whole, like, commercial AMC
I don't
theater.
think this is this the first...
Post-pandemic movie?
No, because we saw Cruella in the movie theater.
Yeah, we saw Cruella.
All right, so last night, we wanted to see two movies. I wanted to see two movies.
You wanted to see two movies. I did not.
Wanted to see The French Dispatch and Last Night in Soho.
But our day ended up where it wasn't a two-movie night.
No, so we saw Last Night in Soho. I wanted to see it because Edgar Wright directed it.
I did not want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I was worried about seeing two movies in a
Yeah.
row. That might be a little much. Like, it's not much some days, but for some reason yesterday it seemed like a lot.
Yeah.
Because I was like more tired, or I didn't feel great, or I don't know what it was.
But I wanted to see it because Edgar Wright does some films. Not that some people really like Edgar Wright. And though we never saw Baby Driver, I think was his last movie. That's even the correct title. But but he's done things like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz
Okay.
and Scott Pilgrim.
I've not seen any of those.
I don't know if you've seen those. And though I don't love all those
But
films,
Edgar
I
Wright
like them all. But Edgar Wright does...
Is The French Dispatch.
No, we're talking
Oh.
about The Last Night in Soho.
Oh, okay.
French Dispatch is Wes Anderson.
Oh, okay. Right. I knew that.
Yeah, no, Edgar Wright, we're talking about this episode's about.
No, I know what this episode is about.
So I'm
I
trying
thought
to...
we were talking about the two movies we wanted to see.
No. I just mentioned that, and then we've kind of moved on.
Okay.
But no, so I'm saying that's the reason we wanted to see it, because I knew a lot of people really like Edgar Wright. I like Edgar Wright. I don't love him, but I like him. But Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim, those are like celebrated Edgar Wright films.
I don't know Edgar Wright, but you showed me the trailer to Last Night in Soho, and I thought it looked intriguing, so that's why I wanted to see it.
And this is, I guess we'll get into it, though I didn't hype this up going into it, where Baby Driver, which we haven't seen, but I do want to see, is more of his action type film.
Mm-hmm.
This is more of his foray into a somewhat throwback horror film as well.
Yeah, definitely horror, thriller-ish.
Well, the second
sure.
half is definitely like a horror film.
Mm-hmm.
More so like a 70s horror film, which we'll talk about. But
This would have fit your neon
oh yeah, from our
bingo card.
from my Halloween movie month.
Yeah.
One of the greatest movies.
Yeah.
No, I'll say this going in, then we'll go deep into it. I liked Last Night in Soho. I did not love Last Night in Soho.
I feel the same way. I liked it, but I didn't love it. There were things that I didn't love about it, but I did like it. I mean, it kept my attention. And all of that before we go into all that. But we haven't, what we usually start with.
I know. We're just jumping right into it.
We usually start with where we are, what we're drinking, kind of like our setting.
Mm-hmm.
So we're at home
Yeah,
tonight.
we're at home. We do occasionally do podcasts at home.
But it's chilly outside. We're sitting by the fire. If you look at our Instagram picture, that's our fire.
Mm-hmm.
And we're drinking a bourbon and ginger. It's kind of our drink of choice tonight. And we're just hanging out at home because it's a Sunday night, and
we saw Last Night in Soho on a Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't get to somewhere during the day on Sunday around town like we usually do. And also, kind of our Saturday night, we were out prior to the movie.
We were.
So you can't live a life of excess every day.
No.
Sometimes you got to come record your movie podcast by fireside.
Sitting on your patio.
So it's like a little fireside chat,
Fireside chat.
if you will.
Definitely.
But we have a couple episodes that we've done at our home. One which hasn't been released yet. It's kind of a standby episode. So we've been to the fire before, but that episode's forthcoming. It's in the vault.
Okay.
It's in the Disney vault.
Okay.
We release it. It's one of those like
Okay.
special episodes.
Gotcha.
It's just there's like 2 movies we haven't released yet. Episodes that just
Okay.
for whatever reason we saw something else and it got missed. It's been recorded. So those are forthcoming. So that's the special surprise for our listeners. Do you remember the movies?
No, I'm trying to think right now. I'm like, which one did we record sitting outside? I can't even think what it was.
One was the Elijah Wood movie, No Man of God. Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's forthcoming. And then we have the Nicole Kidman film, Stoker.
Oh, okay.
Those are both forthcoming.
Okay.
Those things we recorded in the past have been
Gotcha.
set for special release.
Gotcha.
For no other
I
reason
like
that we saw a number of things around that time and we just didn't want to bombard the releases.
Right.
So, because when we see something more recent, we try to put those out first, like a newer film. And we saw like Midnight Mass, we saw Lamb.
Yeah, people
Now
are
we've
more
seen. Well, we like to try to
apt
be
to see.
somewhat what's current in
Current.
the theater release. And
sometimes.
and now with Last Night in Soho, we did that.
Right. So, all right, now let's jump into it.
So I was a little hesitant to recommend the movie for us to see it because
Last Night in Soho?
because Last Night in Soho, one, I knew it's somewhat of like, it's like 2 movies in one. It's the first part of the movie is like the 60s throwback film, which is cool. And I have some thoughts about that. And then the second half, I didn't know where it would go. And we won't go into too much of spoilers until after we do spoilers at the end of the episode after the music.
Right. Was the horror type.
Is the horror element, which we'll talk a little bit about the horror element, but the sort of the mystery thriller part of it we'll save. We won't spoil that.
Yeah.
But I was hesitant to recommend it because of Thomasin McKenzie stars
because
in this film.
we've seen her in a number of films lately. And
I don't think any that we've podcast about because we saw her in Old and we didn't talk about Old.
we saw her in
never
Old, but we
podcast
saw her
Old,
in one or two before
we didn't
that.
like Old very much. And then there was that really bad Netflix movie that felt like a Law and Order episode
I can't remember what it was.
about the missing girls.
Right.
And she's been in other things, but those are the 2 more recent films we've seen her in, and haven't loved her in either one of those.
So we hadn't loved her. Her kind of, do you call it like a speech impediment and I'm not trying to like, I guess that sounds bad when I say it like that, but something about the way she speaks and the way she acts feels annoying and like typecasty-ish.
I thought
You
she
know
was-
what I
I
mean?
know, I
But this movie,
She's really,
I
really
could
good
say it was she was really good in. That didn't come through as much.
But I was thinking about this, and I didn't realize that. I mean, she's foreign. You get the idea when she speaks. But I saw her recently on Stephen Colbert. She's from New Zealand.
I mean, she's lovely.
So
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, I think
you
part of her
said
voice
if you
thing,
see her on Steve Colbert, I'm sure she's lovely and wonderful.
she's really nice and
I'm
sweet.
saying there in the first two things we saw her in, it felt a little like distracting. I shouldn't say annoying. I should say
Yeah,
distracting
distracting.
from the film. About the way her mannerisms and the way she spoke
Mm-hmm.
was distracting.
But for me, it's sort of like just her, like doing the American accent.
Yeah.
I think that's what it kind of is, because I was thinking about it. I was saying a little bit pre-podcast to you about Andrew Garfield, who I might have known this, but I didn't realize that he's British.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, it never clicked.
His name is so British.
It is. It is. It is. But it
Like,
never.
how could you not think
It
he was
never
British?
clicked.
But okay.
Because he always has that Andrew Garfield voice,
Okay.
which is slightly distracting as well.
Okay.
It's somewhat. It's slight. He always seems like slightly whiny.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Garfield.
That's him doing the American.
But then when I was hearing him talk on the CBS Sunday Morning show today, I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Because he's British.
Like he does this other voice. It's not his natural voice, and that's why it's a little distracting. Thomas and Mackenzie is the same. And speaking of which, I mentioned this too pre-podcast. I don't want to see the new Andrew Garfield Tick Tick Boom movie that's on Netflix, but I do want to see The Eyes of Tammy Faye and
he
and
plays
Mainstream.
What's Tammy Faye's husband's name?
Mr.
Wait,
Faye?
hold on, no. I'm blanking.
I don't know.
right now.
So, but anyway,
Wait.
yeah, I don't know. Well,
I just
I'll learn it
heard
when I
it
watch the movie.
today.
I mean, you know it. It's
Oh
like
my
Jim
God.
Baker. Or,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Baker. Yeah.
Um,
And he plays him, which is interesting because I wouldn't see that. I don't see Andrew Garfield. Like, I don't see those two
well,
people.
it's
playing
we'll
each
talk. We'll
other,
probably
but-
end up seeing it and doing an episode
Yeah,
because
we'll definitely
it's
see it.
streaming. I mean, it's.
I mean, that was
you can-
definitely part of our generation growing up. Like,
yeah,
Tammy
in
Faye.
the 700 Club and
yeah.
all that.
So I'm excited to see
But it's
that.
directed by Michael Showalter. That movie, which is he did a movie called The Baxter, but he's more known for, like Wet Hot American Summer and
Oh, okay.
The State, and
Gotcha.
working with Michael Ian Black and David
Mm-hmm.
Wayne. But so I really want to see that. And then also there's the Andrew Garfield movie, Mainstream, where he's that like online social media influencer.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it reviewed too well, but I want to see it. So I think
Okay.
we should do an Andrew Garfield double feature night,
Yes.
and
I
maybe
agree. Excuse me.
a double the Andrew Garfield episode. So that forthcoming along with our other movies we haven't released yet. Right?
Definitely. Definitely.
So I'll put the mic closer to you.
Oh, sorry.
So anyway, Thomas and Mackenzie, I think she's the same thing. Now that I learned, okay, knowing a little bit more about her and where she's from and being from New Zealand, her sort of her
gives
accent,
you
her mannerism. Though in this one, and that's also maybe
A
why I
little
like
more
her,
insight.
she doesn't speak with a New Zealand accent, obviously, but she does with a British accent.
And she does that better.
And her character seems a bit more fitting.
Yes, that's true. I think that's what was better about this with her.
And she was
Her-
just really good in it.
She was really good in it, and her doing the American accent is tough. I have felt in her past roles. I'm sure she'll get better at it, but
It's not that it's bad, it's just distracting because it's just a voice that's a
and
little
her
different.
playing this like shy, kind of sheltered from the small English town
Like rural.
she has that kind of like, I mean, she's a very pretty girl, but she has that more like small town. I mean, it's so believable that character.
Well, she plays
for
that
her.
innocence well and that
I mean, yeah,
naivety.
she almost is that. I mean, she
Yeah.
is that almost.
yeah.
I don't know who she is in real life, but she is that. She has no backstory. I can tell you that.
Well, I don't.
I did some research on her, and she has nothing. No, nothing. She's so young. She's hard to have.
I mean, I haven't
backstory.
done any research, but I know her parents are connected,
Well, her mom's like an actress and acting
Yeah.
coach.
and they've done films, and she kind of. No, I'm not how popular American wise, but
Yeah,
New Zealand. But she hasn't made, like, that's the thing to watch that you haven't watched it, the Stephen Colbert Late Show clip. It's her first American, like, late
Talk
night
show.
TV talk show thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But so the movie, the first half was kind of interesting, and it's good. It's just her. It's like a 1960s, even though it's set in modern time. She loves the 1960s and Audrey Hepburn.
Because she's kind of raised by her grandmother. And
Yeah, she's raised by her grandmother, and she likes the music of the 60s.
She's got a record player and plays the music.
And she really wants to be. I mean, she wants to be like Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah, I mean, she loves the fashion of that day and the beauty of the women and the people in Hollywood and whatnot of that time.
Yeah, so the first half of the movie, I'm sitting here watching it and I'm liking it. And it's just she gets accepted into art school in London.
Or like a fashion design.
Yeah,
school,
fashion school, and she's like a fish out of water. Obviously she's the true artist and visionary of her classmates, which also leads her to be the outcast / ridiculed by. She's not there to party and kind of copy other people's fashions.
Yeah,
she's there to be her own voice.
Right. And she doesn't even know. And then she has this, backstory of her mom kind of like, right? Her mom kind of getting swallowed up by the London scene, right?
Yeah, her mom, it tells you right away, her mom committed suicide. Mm-hmm. You see the mom in the first few minutes, like, as a spirit in the wind. Like, she always sees her in the, mirror.
Right. So she kind of has this kind of protectiveness, I guess, when she moves to London and she moves in this dorm type situation with these girls that are immediately like, partiers and not like her at all and mean girls, basically.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. She's the true visionary. She's different from them. She's cut from a different cloth, if you will.
Which to me, that was very realistic on how.
Well, she makes her own clothes and her outfit.
It feels.
Even when we meet her, which I thought was kind of neat, she's wearing that like dress pattern she cut out of newspaper.
Yeah.
Because she didn't, obviously, like, either she's that creative or and avant-garde, or doesn't have all the material to make a dress.
Right, yeah.
Either or. But no, when I'm watching the first half, or in like the first 30 minutes or so, I'm liking it, especially if you like the 60s and the music and all that. But I couldn't help, part of it, I don't know much about Edgar Wright, but you read a little bit about him and you know that even though he's a child of the 70s, it's sort of that same thing with Quentin Tarantino and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. It's just this cinematic love letter to
the time period,
a previous era. Mm-hmm. Like an era, like us as children of the 80s. Mm-hmm. You grew up always hearing about the 70s because we were living the 80s. Mm-hmm. So it was the 70s culture and music and art
that we always heard about.
That was, because your parents lived it,
kind of
they celebrated it, and it's romanticized. And that's this movie, which I thought, let's get to a point where I thought was interesting, how she romanticized the 60s, even though she was a child of modern age. But like you said, it was more because of her grandmother.
Right, because she's raised by a grandmother.
But this idea of, like, when you look back at the past fondly and how it's not what you think. Seems, yeah. But no, so it's a little bit of like, okay, here's another movie director. Kind of just, it's their nostalgia film. Like, they're at that point, like, oh, I can make a movie all about the 60s. Like Quentin Tarantino did with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Though I like both movies, and I like that, but I get that same feeling, like I'm watching
a nostalgic
another nostalgia trip
piece,
like Hollywood was.
I thought that too, but it was beautifully filmed.
Oh, it looked really good.
Like, it looked really good.
Mm-hmm. It's worth seeing in the theater.
Yeah, I mean, it looked great in the theater.
So what did you like better? Because I've seen some reviews talk about this. What do you like better? The story and the movie of the first half, or the soundtrack?
You know what I'm
soundtrack. Because
the
it's also like a non-stop music movie.
Yeah. Wait, are you asking me what I liked? The story?
I'm thinking, is it a more compelling story or is it a more
better
compelling
soundtrack.
time, 60s music film?
I liked
there's
the
a ton of music.
story. I liked the story. I thought it was different. I liked the music a lot. The story got much more difficult for me towards the end. I mean,
Towards
I
the end.
liked it towards the beginning more than I liked it towards the end because I felt it got a little. Well, it was interesting. Like, I thought, now that it's interesting that it was like a modernistic take on the 60s where people didn't really think that way, but it's kind of like how we think now, women-wise. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, these men, like throughout the whole movie are, I mean, from the moment she arrives in London, right? She's being, what's the word?
She's suspicious of men around her.
She's
Partly
constantly partly because her
she's on her
grandmother.
guard. Yeah, her grandmother warns her.
She's on the guard, but they do show men, which is, I guess, realistic.
In a predatory way.
In a predatory
Even
way.
though, or vulgar or whatever. But you don't never know what is a threat, what's not a threat. In her eyes, pretty much all are a threat. She's just untrusting.
I
in
think
modern
it's
day.
interesting because, like, as a person that went to Europe as a 20-year-old, that's what everybody tells you. So you're like constantly, you don't know if it's like real or if it's like you're just hyper aware because everyone's like, be careful,
I think it's always been the same. I think, like you said, it's you don't know. Like I said, you just should just be careful, and that's kind of what she should be. But
every human,
she's
whether
just
they're man or woman,
Yeah,
should be.
she's untrusting
careful.
of all people. I think what your point is, she thinks another generation, the '60s, was just all wonderful and great, and there wasn't those dangers. But the reality is,
there was.
They were.
Which she soon finds out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was what's the first interesting part of the movie is after kind of leaving her dorm because it's just the party zone and she rents her own place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this like attic apartment in an old lady's house.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever she goes to sleep at night, she dreams or she lives whatever's happening. They don't really ever explain it. But she gets transported to the 60s.
Right. She kind of like lives, lives this other woman's life.
Yeah, about her same age, played by Anya Joy-Taylor, who wants to be like a singer in the nightclubs of London, and quickly gets wrapped into the seedy world of it all, and that's where we see it's not just
the men taking advantage of her and her trying to kind of climb her way up, but having to, do it
in
through
essence just
men.
be like just be an escort at this point, and that she's it's not, though she looks glamorous on the outside,
it's not what it is.
So that's what's the first neat
appears to
part,
be.
right? Is it does all of this through these weird mirror images.
Right.
Like
she's there.
Thomas
in the
and
mirror.
Mackenzie's there, and it constantly changes between the two actors.
Yeah.
And like in the reflections, she's kind of watching this happening, but it's you see each actor in the reflections.
And at first, she literally becomes obsessed with this. And
Well,
she
it's fun at
runs
first.
home to dream about it because she's falling in love in her dreams. She's wearing glamorous dresses. She looks beautiful. Men want to look at her, and this is not how she is in real life.
In the real life, she starts changing her appearance.
So she starts to look like her.
Yeah, she starts making herself look like
yeah.
the woman in her Sandy she goes by in the 1960s girl is Sandy.
Right.
By Anna Joy Taylor.
To me, that name was distracting, but
Why?
All I can think of is Grease when
Oh.
I hear that name, but I don't know.
So I liked about it, like the first, it's like hour of the movie, it's just slowly unraveling, or he's going deeper and deeper into this like dark hole of what's happening in the 60 timeline. So it's kind of like it's not like a time travel movie, but it's like almost like parallel universe movies.
Yeah.
She's living in modern day, but she's also living in the 1960s.
in her dreams.
Yeah. Well, it's
Kind of.
dreams, but
things are happening. Like she
it's
wakes up with a hickey on her
it's like
neck.
Nightmare on Elm Street
Yeah.
style stuff. Like what happens in your dreams happens in real life. Somewhat.
Definitely.
But she's seeing landmarks she's never seen before. So, but it's neat in the first hour you're watching it. And it's been a long time since I've watched a movie where you're like, they're not explaining a lot. And you're just kind of along for this ride. Like, is this real? Is this not real? Is she just dreaming? Was this even a real person? Is this all just like her? Is she just this unreliable narrator?
Because sometimes, well, I definitely think a couple times or several times throughout the movie that she's an unreliable narrator.
I think she is the whole movie. She is, yeah.
You think she's mentally ill.
Well, they hinted that because they said mom had mental illness. That's why she killed herself.
Which you feel bad because you're like, if this is really happening, then you're feeling bad that, that's how she's feeling around her, that everybody thinks she's mentally ill. But she feels like this is really happening to her. And as a audience member, you almost feel guilty for feeling that she's mentally ill. At least I did. Like, I mean, because if you're her friend, John, I mean, what a good friend he was. Because after the first time that she freaks out with him, you would think you'd be like, oh, okay, let me get her some help, but I'm out. Which he doesn't do. He kind of sticks by her, but as a young male,
Yeah.
you feel a little.
No, but that just shows that it teaches her, I think, gradually that she can trust people.
Right.
Like that, because that's her initial thing. She's not very trusting of anybody.
So she finds
And
a
it just
friend or
builds
two.
trust. But yeah, no, so that first part is really interesting to me. The music was really good. The way it looked was really good. It was fun to have a story where nothing was really spelled out for you. And that's why I think the movie shines. I felt that I hadn't seen a movie like this in a long time, especially in the theater. And it felt like you were seeing this sort of art house type film.
Definitely. I thought it was shot really well.
Well, that's the thing with Edgar Wright. He knows what he's
It was
doing.
a beautiful kind of.
And I think, don't quote me on this. I read a little bit on IMDb. I think our cinematographer or the DP, the director of photography for this film, Edgar Wright picked the same person who did The Handmaiden, which is a movie we loved and a movie that looked beautiful. And this movie looked beautiful.
This movie was beautiful as well.
So directing-wise, it's good. Where I think it starts to slip is as it slowly gets out of this nostalgia 60s thriller, which was still really good. The thriller part and the mystery was good. And it starts to get a little more horror movie-ish. And she is haunted by these men.
Men ghosts.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
these
they're
faceless
everywhere.
men ghosts.
It was almost too much
It
of
was a
them
little-
being everywhere.
Right, that was the thing. It was neat when you would see them in the shadows
It
or in
was
the
like,
background.
okay, like we get it. It was almost like Me Too movement to the extreme.
Yeah, it's like we get
It
it.
was like, okay, you're putting this movie out during the time of now, the Me Too movement time, the post kind of modernistic time, feminist to modernistic time, and it's almost like over the top.
Just there were
In
so
that
many
way.
of them. And
Yeah,
it was
so
constant.
many men ghosts, constant. men lurking, constant men predators on her. Like, I get it. I get it. And I sympathize, and it didn't need to be that thrown in your face over the top,
I think
though.
less is more in that case.
Yeah. I
and
agree.
I think that the main guy, the main Jack, his name, the
Yeah.
guy who kind of got Sandy set up but then ended up pimping her out. I think more him as a ghost would have been more menacing, and
Right.
because he was the scary guy, because he was more at first trusting and loving, and kind of lured her in. Like he was the more sinister one, and then when she was the one, he was the one kind of pimping her out.
Yeah,
And it wasn't
honestly,
the faceless men who were just took advantage of her, but then were gone. He was the one. Jack was the one who like deceived her
Yeah.
and changed her. I think having more of him as the haunting ghost figure would have
be
been
more
much more
effective.
menacing and
Yeah.
scary, because that was the true scary. Like
I agree.
you were
That
all
was a little
smiles,
much.
handsome
I was like,
smiles. So that part, that's where it started losing me. And then it gets a little more. It's not that it's bad; it's just let down a bit, because then it becomes almost this somewhat traditional investigative horror movie where she's trying to figure out who Sandy was in the 60s. And it even has like the library scene where she's researching all the
Investigating.
film and looking at
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
articles from the 60s of disappearances
Microfiche.
and murder, microfiche. But it felt like, oh, we're going with this, that
Yeah, kind of changed
because
gears.
that's what we reveal, that right, that's bad, something really bad happens to Sandy through
Yeah.
all this. So now she wants to investigate.
Right.
And she goes to the police. Hey, I know something about this girl from the 60s, 40 years
People are
ago,
like,
50 years ago.
So every time you go to sleep, you're dreaming of this.
Yeah. And I get it. It kind of shows her like unraveling, and you're not sure what is real or what's not, like
Right.
what she fully believes. And that part was still good. But now she's trying to investigate what happened and doing research and
Yeah.
uncovering things, which to me, I wanted something a little more. For such a wacky first half, right? You go to sleep in a room and you wake up living in the 60s as another person. I wanted it to keep going unconventional, and it slowly becomes more conventional as you go.
Yeah.
That was the disappointing. Not that it was bad, but maybe that's why I think that's what people seem to like. It's good Rotten Tomatoes reviews. That's why
Yeah.
people
No,
like it.
I really liked it, except the men ghost part was over the top, and then the very, very end, which we won't talk about yet, was to me disappointing as well. But how it ended.
It isn't, because without getting into it, before spoilers, that's like the good and bad of this film. That's why I said I like it, but I didn't love it. This is like Edgar Wright's. I think it's a little unfortunate that Quentin Tarantino did this a few years ago with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and unfortunately did it better.
Yeah. That's a different story. But
No, but you
Yeah.
wrote a love letter to a
Yeah.
time, and you copied a lot of styles.
yeah, for sure.
This movie, especially as it gets into the horror movie realm, copies like the 1970s Italian horror
Movie.
giallo films. Like, I know you watched some of it, but when I watched Dario Argento's Deep Red for the other podcast, that's the one where he's investigating
Right.
the murder
Yeah.
of those folks. Edgar Wright, now minus all, not with all the ghosts and scares, but as we get closer to figuring out what's really happening, it's also kind of paying tribute to those Italian horror films of the 1970s. And so you can appreciate, it, so you appreciate it. And so if you know that, even the ending and how the whole movie wraps up, makes a bit more sense. Like, I think even with Deep Red, that Argento film, as you learn what really happened, you're like, okay. Like, it makes sense, but you're just a little let down.
But you feel like it was already done in Hollywood.
Well, I'm saying because you're almost kind of forgiving
Quentin
of Edgar.
Tarantino.
You're forgiving of Edgar Wright because he's kind of making a style of movie from the 70s, those Italian horror films.
Yeah.
And the way those things are, the plot of those and how those work out. He's doing it here. So once you understand that film format, you go, okay, I see what you're doing. You're referencing films from another era.
Right.
So it's forgiving. I'm saying what Tarantino does better is he references films from another era, and even something like Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
But he also makes a really good, compelling film. He makes his own thing.
Yeah.
Where this was still really good. It just, I don't know. There's something.
I agree. I mean, again, I enjoyed it, but I agree with that. There was something like missing from it.
It didn't have that like, oh wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
For a premise of a person living two lives, it lacked that. Oh wow, like crazy. I don't know, like crazy bonkers element.
You never knew whether to feel like. I never felt. I never knew whether to feel sorry for her because she was losing her mind, or whether to like really get freaked out by the horror and ghost story of it. I couldn't decide which side to be on, but that wasn't a good indecision in the middle of a movie. It was kind of like which story are they trying to tell? Like of a woman losing her mind? Or are they trying to tell a ghost story?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I couldn't decide what part to be part of.
Or are they trying to tell a 60s nostalgic retro film?
Yeah. That's fine too, but
you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying about why I hate to bring it up so much. That's what I'm saying about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, right? It's clearly he's retelling this whole story about these films and this actor and even Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate, I mean, and all that, right? And even changes the course of history and rewrites history. Right. So he does this, but you just, it's all packaged and goes together well. Here, like you said, there's a little too much confusion into like, what is this story? Like, where is it?
And I think because the ghost part of it is so over the top.
I think you cut the ghost guys out.
Yeah,
and it's a
no,
much
I
better
agree.
movie.
I think if you cut some of that out, it would have been less like confusing in that way. It would have been a little more stylistic.
Everything that still happened.
Yeah.
But the ghost dudes are way
Not
cut
there.
down. Yeah. But what?
I was just wondering where you were going because I was going to talk about some fun facts I found.
Do the fun fact, because then we'll get back to there's a little more we can talk about.
About the ending.
We'll do after the music.
Okay.
About how it all kind of
So
wraps
it's
up.
funny. I was researching
Thomas and Mackenzie?
Thomas and Mackenzie. Couldn't think of her name.
Mm-hmm. Which, again, I want to say before you do this, her performance alone, that's the best. That's what
She
we
did
said.
great.
We started off
I really liked her.
not being crazy about her in some of her previous roles, but
this is her best role.
this is her best role, no
For
question.
sure. No question. I started out researching about her, but there's nothing much about her because she's only 21 years old. I mean, she just,
Is she 21 now?
She's 21 right now.
Which, think about this.
She was born in 2000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because even that movie, Soho, Old, that's the thing. Most of the stuff we're seeing her, it's all like, it's not like current stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because even this movie, I think, was finished in 2019.
Yeah.
But it got shelved because of COVID.
She's so young. Yeah.
She's older now, but...
Yeah. but she's 21 now in 2021. Yeah. So I didn't find much about her, but as I was digging, I found out. I thought I found the landlady very intriguing. Do you know anything about her?
Oh, a little bit. When you tell me more,
Okay.
it'll.
So
The
her
old lady,
name's-
the old lady in the house she rents from.
Yeah. That intrigued me. So her name's Diana Rigg.
Okay.
I guess is her last name, Rigg. I was trying to look it up again, but just to make sure I didn't get it wrong, but I think it's Rigg.
Okay.
Pretty sure it is. And anyway, that was her last performance because she died.
Yeah, she did.
In 2020.
At the beginning
because
of the movie,
it's dedicated to
the
her.
movie is dedicated to her.
But she's been in a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Like a ton of stuff. And back in the day, like in the 60s, which I think is lovely that she's in this movie, and this is her last movie, seeing that was kind of an homage to the 60s. Back in the 60s, she was a James Bond girl.
Yeah.
Wife.
Yes, yeah.
Or a wife. Wife of James Bond. And she was like known as this like sex symbol in the 60s in her real life career.
Yeah.
So I think it was interesting that she was in this homage to the 60s kind of film for the last film of her life. I think that's special.
Which there's no, there's
I mean,
Edgar Wright
not-
cast her for that very reason,
Yeah.
Her casting was no mistake.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was
Yeah,
very
yeah,
deliberate,
yeah.
yeah.
And anyway, I just like found that interesting. That's really my only fun fact about her because she's good in it, but she's, she doesn't have a major role in it. She plays kind of a strict landlady that I mean, yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we talk about the ending, but that kind of tries to keep Thomason in line,
But she has her part's good. We didn't talk about it much, but her part's really good. Also, she has like the strict rules in the house, like no boys after 8 p.m. And she kind of also takes the role, even though she's not present a lot, kind of fills the role of the grandmother that she left as well.
Right. I thought it was interesting when she did pick that apartment to move into. I was like, it's interesting that she picks an old lady's house to live in.
Yeah.
Because she's moving, this is what she's used to. She's used to living with her grandmother, and she moves to the dorms with all these young people, and this is too much for her. So she moves into an old lady's house.
Yeah.
Which is, psychologically very real in a sense,
The other actor who was just really good in it, just for a small part, was Terrence Stamp.
Oh, the bartender guy.
The older, no, he's not. Well, he's at the bar. Terrence Stamp is the old man.
The old man.
We've seen him in
Yeah,
a ton
yeah,
of
yeah.
things. He's been in everything through the 80s and 70s.
Who she thinks is.
Well, it's just another one of the males she's very suspicious of and worried
he's
about.
just kind of like this bar fly guy.
Old man, like creepy old man.
Yeah, creepy old man.
He's always
guy.
following her. And he always kind of, well, not following her, but appears where she is and always has something to say to her.
But
he's good. I mean, you recognize him from a ton of things.
Yeah.
But Terrence Stamp is really good in it as well.
Yeah.
So the big question is, before we get to the end part, spoilers, would you recommend someone to go see Last Night in Soho?
I would recommend someone go see it. I think it was good and entertaining, and I'm glad we saw it in the movie. Like, no regrets there.
No, I agree. I'd recommend it.
I definitely would recommend it. I don't think it's like the best movie in the world.
It's not
perfect. I think
perfect.
it has its issues, but I think it's an entertaining movie to see.
But you know what's great about it?
What?
Given that all the trailers we watched prior to the movie, because there were a lot.
It didn't give away a lot.
No. Oh, I meant the trailers in the movie theater
Oh.
before the movie.
Oh, yeah,
when
yeah,
we're
yeah.
sitting in there.
Yeah.
Every trailer we watched is either sequel to something else. It is, they start with the word Marvel in front of them.
True.
There's some sort of
It's another thing about
property,
Diana Rigg.
you know,
She
this-
was in the Avengers in the 60s. But go ahead.
who?
Diana Rigg.
Diana Rigg. No, but I'm saying I would recommend it simply. That's what I meant earlier when I said it's like watching an art house film. It was at least nice to see some sort of movie doing something somewhat different.
Oh, yeah. It was different. It was
Everything
definitely
else,
different.
even all the trailers we saw, was either a sequel, a Marvel movie, a superhero movie, or some sort of by the numbers horror thriller
For
thing.
sure. I love the
So that's why I
fashion
read.
design aspect of it.
No,
I
the
love
look,
the
the
neon.
sound.
I love the cinematography. I loved the kind of feel of the movie in general. So, yeah, I would say,
Yeah, I'll say this.
I would highly recommend it.
I kind of gave Quentin Tarantino a lot of points in comparison for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Though he probably wrote the better movie and the better story and probably directed it better.
Definitely, yeah.
And maybe had the better soundtrack too. I don't know. But
This isn't a bad soundtrack.
this wins some points, I think, just stylistically and just fun-wise.
Yeah.
I would watch this before I watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood again.
Oh, really?
This has though I think Hollywood's a better movie in so many other areas. But for your two nostalgia films, this one was just more fun. Where I don't ever
It
look at
was.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as fun.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it
It was
as
more
just a well-made movie, serious film. This is just, I think this is just Edgar Wright having the time of his life.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
It
I want
was
to make
fun.
a movie about the 60s that has trippy dreams and parallel universe stuff. And also turns into a 70s horror ghost movie film as well.
Yeah.
And it's a mess, but it's fun.
Yeah.
And I
she
think
did well in it. Thomason.
Anna Joy Taylor did well in it too.
Yeah. Oh, she was great too. Really great.
So, all right. We'll
We'll be back.
we'll be right back. If you haven't seen it and don't
We're
want to
gonna
hear
take a
exactly
break.
how it ends, we'll just stop it here. The music plays.
Yes.
But if not, we're going to talk about kind of the big reveals at the very end of the movie.
Big reveal. So
After the
watch
music.
the movie and then come back.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
So the big
Big reveal.
reveal is your old, what was her name? Diana Rigg? Diana Rigg, the old lady landlord,
Is
Sandy.
Sandy.
So she was never murdered like
No.
like she thought she
She was never murdered, but she murdered
She murdered a lot of guys,
a lot of men.
a lot of men. And they're all hidden in the floorboards and walls of the house
Yes, which is why the ghosts are everywhere.
in that room. So that's the question, right? When you ask yourself, like, why is she seeing all these ghosts? That's only because in that room, which also was kind of a, little subtle things which are nice about that, right? Like early in when she's moving into the house, which again it's like classic horror movie stuff, right? She
It's dark.
She gets to this old house. She lives in the attic, but then.
But she loves it because she's kind of used to the old lady-ish
Yeah.
kind of house style.
But not dark and damp and
Yeah.
dingy like this place. Her home is very bright.
Yeah.
This is lit by neon light. There's a French bistro next door.
Right.
But that's the thing that I thought was funny. When you realize it later, right? The old lady says, the landlord, when she moves in, first mentions like the strong smell of garlic. Like, hope garlic doesn't bother you. which also thinks about just the smell, right? But then she says in the warmer months, you kind of have to plug the
I never
holes
caught
or the
that.
drains
yeah,
or whatnot.
Yeah.
She goes because
With the
it's
heat and
warm and the heat, and then it just makes everything smell. It's because there's like
Dead men.
there's rotted corpses and bodies all through the house.
Yeah.
So it's just little things like that, like little cheeky
Yeah.
things.
I didn't even put that together towards the end, but
Yeah. So then at the end, it turns into this whole like. You even have like little moments of like psycho and whatnot, right?
yeah.
Like psycho sounds,
Mhm.
because now the old lady is the murderer.
they only used to murder the house.
Well, she's Sandy, who killed all these
Stairwell.
men and hid their bodies in the house. But now she's like murderous rage woman,
Yeah.
right? She tries to kill, Thomas and Mackenzie.
Yeah.
She's
Everyone.
she's poisoned her with her tea,
Mm-hmm.
which I guess that gets resolved because she says, "I know you're not going to tell anyone when they're
Because
talking."
you've been poisoned.
Which says you've been poisoned, but
But
we're
yeah.
meant to see. But I guess that was fine. I guess she didn't drink enough of it,
I
or
guess
did she
didn't
seek
drink
medical
enough of
attention
it.
later?
She passes out, and then what happens? She passes out, and
Well, she has her big fashion show.
well, yeah. Then that's what I'm talking about. I didn't like the ending. Like,
So you didn't like the fashion show ending, where, or
no, I don't. I didn't like how it jumped from okay, she passes out at this lady's house, like she's gonna be killed, and then it jumps to her like, and everything's okay. Like,
well, it didn't pass out. The house burned up.
oh yeah, the house burned up.
She never passed out. I mean, it was a struggle and a fight. That's when they're on the stairs and she's trying to be stabbed with the
Oh
knife.
yeah.
And it's doing the psycho sounds.
I know, but it went from that to like. Now I'm doing it a fashion show.
Which, again, that's what I meant earlier when I said it's sort of those 70 Italian horror movies,
the
right?
ending didn't. The ending came to like too rapidly.
It's abrupt.
It's abrupt.
But that's what that's what I meant when I said if you know these Italian horror giallo films, that's what they do. Like Deep Red, which we watched a couple weeks ago. It's a really good movie. It's not one of the greats, but it's really good. You're laughing because it didn't get voted one of the greats on the other
I
podcast.
was laughing about that. Yes.
But it's this slow moving movie.
Right.
And then all of a sudden at the end of Deep Red,
It's abrupt.
you learn that the mother character in this film was the murderer, and that instantly she tries to kill the guy. It doesn't work out. Movie's over. Flash to happy ending. Right.
Right.
All within the last 5 or 10
And
minutes.
I guess that is
Same thing
what-
happened here, and that's
that was the homage to the
the giallo films of
Giallo
that era.
films. Yeah.
And so it's that same thing. Like all of a sudden you think you're watching one movie, and then all of a sudden it totally switches gears. It's not even a ghost movie anymore.
No.
It's a
just
slasher
like-
film. It's a 70s slasher
It's
movie.
just like all of a sudden she's just like either she's being this is real, like this lady has killed all these women and there's all these men
killed all these
hiding in
men.
there. Men. Or this is severely mentally ill girl. Or both. Like, she's severely mentally ill and she's being traumatized by this woman. But then all of a sudden it's like, and everything's normal.
Well, it is and it isn't, right? It lets you know, it says, okay, she isn't crazy. She was really being tormented by ghosts. And for whatever reason, because she has this psychic link, she can see things other people can't see. They say it in the very beginning of the movie, the grandmother tells her. Because she sees her mother all the time in the mirror. And at the end of the movie, she sees her mother again for the first time. But then mother disappears, and who does she see? Sandy shows back up in the mirror,
Yeah.
right? All right, Anna Joy Taylor. And it's like, oh, so maybe she still has a little bit of her weirdness about her. And the ghost might not fully have let her go. But here's what I thought was weird, which was an interesting thing, right? The whole movie, the thing we didn't like the most, the faceless male ghost, which again I felt was a little, for a movie that didn't explain anything to you, which I thought was nice, give your audience some credit. You don't need the line in the movie when Diana Rigg, the landlord, is telling, when revealing everything, right? And she goes, I just had to block out their faces, and they all became faceless men to me.
She didn't need to explain that. Yeah.
I'm like, we get it. You know,
It's all these like white old men too. It's like disgusting.
But
I mean,
she-
it's all disgusting.
she
like, it's
blatantly
just,
said, oh, I had to block
yeah,
out
no,
their faces so they're all a blur.
I get it. They did, that was unnecessary.
I was
yeah.
like, come on. We got that already. We put that together the
Of
first
course
time
you
we
did.
saw them.
I mean, yeah.
But here's what I thought a little interesting, maybe. The whole movie, I mean, that's what I mean. That's kind of just a messy movie. The whole movie, you're led to believe, oh, these ghost men are tormenting and haunting her.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. Because at the very end, they say, help us, kill her,
Yeah,
help us, right?
They're not really tormenting her.
No. So then
They're
it creates
like-
then it creates this interesting question, right? It's like, who is she? She's in this tough spot, right? They're all kind of monsters. Right? Like, who is she?
Who's she frightened by?
No, not frightened. I'm saying, obviously, the men who took advantage of her, who are fully aware of the situation, right?
You're talking about
Of
Sandy.
Sandy.
Okay.
But the ghost men, right?
yeah.
Who we've been led to believe are so bad and evil. Right?
Yeah.
But then they were all murdered,
Yeah.
throat slit, and stabbed to death. No, Jack, the pimp guy,
Was not.
truly, no, he was murdered and stabbed.
Oh, yeah. He was murdered.
20 times he was stabbed,
Yeah.
they told us.
Yeah.
He was truly a monster, right?
No, he was the monster. That's why he should have been the ghost.
Yeah, but I'm saying these other men who are not saints, obviously. They knew what was going on. They were willing participants in this thing. They knew this Sandy woman was being exploited and taken advantage of. I don't know if that deserves getting their throats slit. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, I don't think
But-
anyone deserves getting their throat slit. Let's have
That's
a
what I'm saying.
conversation there
So
about
then
that.
it becomes this thing. They're saying, oh, help us, right? But at the same time, we have sympathy for modern day old lady Sandy. Like I said, there's a lot of complex stuff there that the movie quickly
Dismisses.
brushes over. Like it presents it,
I think
but I think
it
there's some
dismisses
true
it. Yeah.
interest there. That's what I'm saying. That's the tough part. It's like, oh, she does have sympathy for Sandy, and because that's what she even says later. Like Sandy died that day, like in the room when she was a child or a lady. So Thomasin McKenzie's character is in this crazy position momentarily amongst the fire that's in the room. Right?
Yeah, where she's like,
So all these men are saying, avenge us, help us. You know, we were murdered and stuffed in the floorboards of this house. Then you have the landlady there who did it all and now trying to kill her and her new boyfriend. You
Yeah.
know, her first ever major relationship. So there's this complexity to the whole situation that I think is a very interesting part of the movie that all happens, I would say, within the span of 3 minutes.
It
And then,
doesn't
like you
get
said, it's
addressed.
totally gone.
dismissed.
And she
Yeah.
she does her fashion thing. Which, that's where I struggle, is this part of this does well in the whole, well, that's what a 70s Italian horror film would have done
But this
as well.
isn't a 70s Italian
No,
horror film.
it's not, but that's what Edgar Wright wanted.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that completely. But
But I'm
at the
saying
same
you're right.
time,
Spend all this time on these.
at the same
on a
time,
library-
they are making a 70s horror film homage to that, but they're also addressing the time period of now at the same time. They're addressing men as predatory people and this movement that we're going through right now in today's time. They're really touching on that. They're really playing towards that, for sure.
I know, but even then, it's a complex question of the extreme of Sandy's character murdering them all.
No, I know. Yes. That is, for sure.
And you have someone like Thomas and Mackenzie who's just in the middle of it, the messy middle, to quote Dax Shepard for his podcast. You didn't see that. You didn't see that one coming, did you?
No, I didn't. One of my favorite podcasts of all time. Dax.
That's what I'm saying. If you want
Monica.
if Edgar and them are trying to present these bigger modern day questions as you submit, I think you have a really good thing there that just gets, unless you're thinking about it, the whole thing goes up in flames, right?
No, it's too fast, quick, like rolls over things that should be made more of a point of. Yeah, for sure.
And for a movie that's been
depending on what your point is, and I think there's too many different points going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing.
Well, I think one big
solid.
point is, hey,
What's the point?
when you look back things with rose-tinted glasses and nostalgia, it's not as pretty and nice as it. But again, that's kind of an old theme. We've seen that.
We've seen that.
That's, I mean,
Or is it the homage?
David
to the
Lynch has a whole
Italian
movie and TV
Giallo
career.
thing? I don't
based-
know. Was that the point?
No. No, over his point. I'm saying one of the themes of the movie is like, the 1960s, looking back on things with nostalgia,
Yeah.
isn't always as great as you thought it was.
Right.
But I said there's nothing new there because David Lynch's whole movie career and TV career is based on things are pretty on the outside, but on the inside they're sinister and dark, right? And that's what Twin Peaks and all that's about.
So
there's
I
nothing-
mean, the point is lost a little bit on what the point is.
Well, it's just too many points, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing for a movie that looks really good, for a director who's really good, and for a movie that is fun and keeps you guessing. There's also, that's why I said there's no wow moment in here. There's no aha moment. There's no, well, that's your unique, you've added something to either the conversation or you've added something to cinema and film, Edgar Wright. Instead, you just know, you're good at making Edgar Wright movies.
Right. That's definitely what it was, for sure.
So that's just my thought on that.
Yeah. I agree. But Thomason did well. I enjoyed Diana Rigg's last performance.
It was somebody else's last
I
performance, too.
enjoyed
I
the
think it was the other
cinematography.
grandmother's last performance, too, unfortunately. Her grandmother?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the movie, it says it pays tribute. Was that played by?
And she was adorable, that other grandmother.
I don't see it
I'm
here,
a fan of grandmas.
but I think it was quite possibly her
I
too.
like how your glasses are like halfway on your head right now. So you can see halfway out of your glasses and halfway in.
Regardless,
I
good
like that
stuff.
grandma. She was really like energetic and sweet and supportive, and she played like a really good grandma role.
But I think the ending, to end on this maybe, but I think at the same time that ending works for a general audience. It explains everything. And it has your sort of suspenseful ending to it all. Just for me, it was disappointing in a movie that was kind of out there. It could have gotten bonkers and weird.
Yeah, I think that for the movie feel, the ending felt too pretty and happy and.
But at the same time, I don't want to sound like a dead record. But at the end of the day, it is what it does exactly what it's supposed to be. Like, it's Friday the 13th Part 1, right?
Yeah.
It's all the camp kids are being killed, and it's it's Jason's mother the whole time. Like Jason's not in Friday the 13th part 1, right? It's just the whole time it's been this mother killing people because her son was let drown by kids, right? So you think it's this other thing, and it's just, oh no, it's just this woman going around killing people. Same thing here. Oh, you think it's this big other thing? No. It's just this girl who is sort of in touch with spirits,
Okay.
has kind of a kin to connection to can sense and feel things. Happened to rent a room
With
with a woman who killed a bunch of
bunch of
men
men.
in the 60s.
in the simplified version of the whole movie.
Yeah. And that's what it is. So like, okay. Cool.
Oh,
All right.
all
So
right.
Last Night
Well,
in Soho.
Last Night in Soho. I recommend it.
I think, yeah.
I
mean,
recommend it.
Like I said, I think our conversation, especially this last half, made me like it even more.
Yeah.
And it's one of these when it comes streaming, like a $5 rental, I think we should rent it again, watch it. I know how much you like watching movies again.
I hate that, but I will sit next to you, and if I fall asleep, it won't matter because
Yeah.
I've already seen it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's fine.
Oh, well, let's cheers.
Let's cheers.
All right.
This was fun.
That was good. Until our next one. Yeah. Oh,
our
until our Andrew Garfield double feature.
Oh, yeah.
But you never know. You never know what we're going to see.
You never know between
All right.
now and then.
Okay. All right.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Again.
Bye again.